Folks, welcome back to Talkin' Soccer. Of course, I'm your host, Justin Horniker, and I'm struggling from the lack of sleep I've been getting lately. But I think tonight is the night that I'll get it right in terms of my napping to sleeping through the night, sleeping through the morning. That 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. is where I need the sweet spot to be. Of course, today, some earlier games, so it should be done by 5 a.m. Anyway, folks, you haven't come here to hear me whine about my sleep schedule. You've come here to hear me talk about some beautiful soccer that's being played right now in the World Cup. And I wrote about this on the Talkin' Soccer Substack today, but just on how Brazil played in their 4-0 win over Panama. Of course, there were other games. We'll highlight that a little bit afterwards. Italy win 1-0 for Argentina. You had just a couple thorough beatdowns last night. But let's talk about Brazil and Panama first, because I think this was the game that, even more than Germany's 6-0 win over Morocco, I think that this game kind of epitomized what Brazil is trying to do in this World Cup. It's a team that is desperately trying to take that next step, desperately trying to ascend to that world great football status like they are on the men's side. And this is probably the real coming out party for what, as Brazil calls it, the beautiful game, o jogo bonito. That was kind of this game in a nutshell. And honestly, it comes down to Pia Sundhage just understanding what Brazilian football should be. Pia, of course, has done it all, and this would maybe be her lasting legacy if Brazil goes far in this tournament. And it's only fitting that this is the team that embodies Brazilian football more than any other team before it, because as Marta exits stage left, she only gets a 20-minute appearance in this game. I think that's going to be pretty regular across the tournament because you have stars in front of her. She doesn't need to be the superstar. She can come in these relief moments and kind of be that inspiration with her courageous attitude, as Pia Sundhage talked about it. I think one thing I've noticed, I've been following this team around. I went to She Believes earlier this year. I talked with Pia in Orlando. I saw Marta's return in Orlando, followed them to Nashville and to Austin in that tournament. They've come a long way since the start of Pia's tenure, and they've come a long way this year too. And I think it's a lot to do with these players rising up and a lot of them seeking out bigger challenges in their club competitions as well. That was one thing that Marta and Pia both talked about at She Believes, was that this influx of, especially Brazilians, to the NWSL. Kansas City announced another Brazilian signing today, and the amount of Brazilian players in the NWSL right now has been good for their national team as they rise to bigger challenges in one of the best leagues in the world. I mean, we can have that debate if we want, but NWSL from top to bottom, each and every week, they're going against a tougher defensive battle than they would in any other league in the world, like outside of Champions League. If we're talking week in, week out defensive challenges, what you get in the NWSL is only helping players like Carolyn, players like Ari Borges, who had 4 goal contributions in this match. Ari is a player who played for Palmeiras before coming to Racing Louisville, and has been a pretty good NWSL player, but now you put her back in the Brazil system from, the growth that she's had in the NWSL this year, along with, playing, I guess she kind of plays out on the wing in this system, but really it's a positionless system. I talked about it a bit in the article, but Debinha plays up top, kind of on the left. You have Carolyn, more centrally, and then you have Ari kind of over on the right wing, but she comes in centrally. She comes forward. It's a lot of interchange here and there, and then just, good defensive play and good ball movement by the fullbacks and center backs as well. And this game in particular, as the Brazilian men's team gets kind of lauded for being too European, I think it's only fitting that beautiful Brazilian quick one-touch football comes home with this women's team, with the Seleção Feminil. It's when you watch this third goal in particular. So Brazil win 4-0. Ari Borges has 4 goal contributions, but her assist is probably the best, not necessarily the assist itself, but this play was probably the greater encapsulation of what I'm trying to get across here. You have this typical Brazilian ball where it starts with a long pass down the touchline to Debinha. Debinha gets on it. She has a 1-2 with Adriana. Debinha grabs the ball back at kind of the edge of the box. She sends it in. It's settled down cleanly by Ari Borges. Ari lays it off for Beatrice, who just slams home a rocket. And you saw the celebration afterwards. And it's just this one-touch play, this quick passing all the way down the pitch that just ends in complete overload in the box and a relatively easy final goal. But the build-up and how they got there was just pure skill up and down the pitch. And when you have all 6 players in the midfield and in the attack are playing with this frenetic pace and just skill, ability to dribble, ability to take players on and quick passing, when the real test will be in their game against France. France is a team that can slow you down, that does play that more European structured style. So that's going to be the real key, because now Brazil, they're going into game 2, and that France game is probably going to be the decider for the group. France stumbling in their first match against Jamaica. If they don't beat Brazil, if they draw, or if they flat out lose to Brazil, then Brazil are going to win the group. And I think that's, number one goal for this team, especially if France ends up being a little bit overrated and Brazil a little bit underrated. It only makes sense that they would come out and win this group. I'm very excited for what we're going to see from Brazil, from Pia Sundhage's squad. And, hearing Pia talk about this too, I think just shows you how important she is as a coach with where she's been on this team. It tells you that they know the scale of the moment for Marta. They know the scale of the moment for Brazilian football in general. Some interesting backstory. So the phrase that is typically used in Brazil are to describe Brazilian football, a jogo bonito. That's the beautiful game in Portuguese. It's kind of credited as coming from Pele, although it's credited other places too. In his book, he, says that kind of really embodies Brazilian football. And I've had players talk to me about this before, and that Brazilian football really is an expression of who you are on the pitch. That's why you see so much more kind of freestyle dribbling and passing. It's from the time that they first step onto the pitch, they first start dribbling a soccer ball. It's that free-flowing expression that in Brazil, maybe, sometimes in the Western space, especially in American youth systems, that we try to kind of hammer that out of players in the name of structural definition. But I think it's interesting because the women's game was barred for so long in Brazil. It wasn't until the mid-1980s that it was made legal for the women's game to even exist. So you have this kind of stigma that comes from the game being deemed too tough, too difficult, too masculine for these women to play. You have Marta and that generation coming up and kind of breaking down those barriers along the way. You have in 2019, after Brazil is knocked out, you have Marta give this impassioned speech about how they need to take that next step, how they need to cry a little bit in the process of these next 4 years in order to enjoy it in the end. And then you have these players that have grown up just idolizing Marta and what she is to Brazilian football. Now you have this generation that has grown up in that image, and they'll be the one to potentially see Brazil to the promised land of a long World Cup run. And for Marta, hopefully that ends in a World Cup title. As an American, I have mixed feelings about that, because as much as I want the U.S. to win every year, when you follow this Brazil team, you see how much joy they play with, and you know Marta's story, you kind of want them to win also. I think it's interesting with the growth of women's sports in general. The growth of women's football in Brazil has been kind of astronomical recently, especially. With these games starting at 8 a.m. Brazil time, they've moved back the workday to allow everyone to watch these matches. And it turns out that they had 11.5 million viewers on local Brazilian television to watch this match, the most of any Women's World Cup game ever, and the second most since their last Olympic final appearance. It's incredible. So France is the next step. But in the meantime, we just have to enjoy every process. And when you look at the rest of these games, you had the 1-0 win, you had Germany's 6-0 just destruction of Morocco. This was definitely the game that was the most entertaining of the night. The 1-0 match before this that saw Italy get a header at the end of the match over Argentina, that game was a bit of a chess match, but you didn't have a lot of just hard intensity that you had when you watch Brazil play that free-flowing game. So I wanted to kind of highlight them in this video and highlight them in my World Cup daily coverage. So thank you all so much for watching. If this is your first time finding me, the Talking Soccer page, please subscribe. Give this video a thumbs up if you like what I had to say, if that was a good little primer on what this Brazil team is this year more than any other year. And we'll have some good stuff on the channel coming forward. Of course, we're sticking with World Cup videos every day. I'm going to get to some men's stuff here. The next video you'll see after this is going to be talking about the Leagues Cup and everything going on in MLS and Liga MX at this point. So stay tuned. Make sure you turn on those notification buttons if I'm putting out a lot of content. So make sure you're on board. Or not. I don't know. I'm not your dad. Anyway, everyone, have a great day, and we'll talk very soon.